Hey everyone, fellow history students, welcome to this explainer. We usually look at early human development through dusty dates and artifacts, but today we're doing something different. We are extracting the very real, visceral mechanics of Paleolithic survival from a seriously gripping firsthand narrative. We're going to focus entirely on early human resourcefulness, specifically the intense tracking, hunting, and injury care skills that quite literally kept our ancestors alive. All right, let's just dive right in and anchor ourselves in the absolutely terrifying stakes of prehistoric life. Picture this. A father wakes up under these stiff, dried animal hides. He reaches for the fire pit, and it's just cold ash. Beside him, his 4-year-old son is burning up with a fever, and overnight, his dry cough has morphed into a wet cough. And the father? He knows the harsh, brutal math of survival here. He's already watched 6 children in his band die from that exact wet cough. To save his son, he needs nutrient-dense meat broth. And to get that, he has to venture out into a wet, completely unforgiving world, all alone. So to really grasp how our ancestors survived this kind of nightmare, we'll quickly map out our journey today. We'll look at the prehistoric reality, endurance hunting and tracking, outsmarting apex predators, ancient triage and medicine, and wrap up with the lineage of survival. Section 1, the prehistoric reality, starting with that incredibly harsh morning. We're starting with the raw, tactile reality of his morning. And let me tell you, the margin for error here is literally 0. It brilliantly illustrates the domino effect of prehistoric disaster. Think about it. Someone accidentally leaves the firewood out in the rain, right? Which means no heat. Because there's no heat, the father has to go out immediately. Then, while crossing a stream, a simple, everyday slip on a rain-slicked walk gives him a deep gash on his leg, right down to the muscle. Instantly. And this is the terrifying part, that blood scent travels up to a mile, sending out a dinner bell to every wolf, cave bear, and big cat around. So a simple mistake just turned the hunter into the hunted, all while he's carrying the massive pressure of needing roughly 30 pounds of meat to save his boy. Moving on to Section 2, endurance hunting and tracking. Let's look at tracking prey. Now consider the sheer biological advantages that allowed early humans to actually secure food. Our father here relies on early human biology. We're talking long, flat feet that act like shock absorbers, spring tendons in our legs to store and release energy, and, this is absolutely crucial, hairless skin with sweat glands. Now compare that to the animals. They're built for burst speed. They will literally cook themselves from the inside out because they can't sweat like we do. So early humans relied heavily on endurance running. We could just casually jog after prey for hours and hours until the animal literally collapsed from exhaustion. But here's the catch. In his badly wounded state, running just isn't on the table. He has to scavenge. He's relying on acute sensory tracking under immense life or death pressure. He smells fresh meat and actually tracks down a recently killed deer. He touches the carcass, feels that it isn't stiff yet, which tells him the kill is under a few hours old. And check out the incredible resourcefulness here. The deer provides the life-saving food, its hide becomes the bag to carry that food, and the sinew from its back becomes the rope to tie it up. Absolute zero waste. But at the same time, he's straining his ears, trying to differentiate the sound of the wind from the heavy breathing of whatever apex predator actually made that kill. Because guess what? It's definitely watching him right now. Which brings us right to Section 3, outsmarting apex predators and escaping the cat. To escape the beast that actually killed this deer, the father scrambles up a fragile tree, literally dripping blood down the bark behind him. And out from the brush steps a saber-toothed cat. We're talking about an animal with teeth longer than your hand, evolutionarily designed to puncture the throats of bison. And it just sits down to wait. For 10 minutes, our guy sits completely frozen. An hour passes, and his leg goes completely numb. After 4 agonizing hours in this tree, he's facing a very real risk of death from cold, immobility, and blood loss, but he cannot move a muscle. He simply has to outwait this massive cat until sundown, when it finally decides to wander off for an easier meal. So he manages to escape the tree in the pitch dark. But remember, he's lugging 30 pounds of raw, scavenged meat. And worse, his wound has reopened, and fresh blood is just hitting the dirt. His nervous system, which is dialed up to 11 and processing 100 tiny sounds at once, picks up something terrifying: the soft, rhythmic drumming of paws on wet leaves. 4 wolves are trotting right behind him. This brings up a fascinating, if terrifying, point: the sheer, brutal mathematical calculation of sacrifice required back then. Think about his options. He can't outrun them with a torn-up leg, he can't climb another tree. If he tries to fight 4 wolves at once, he dies, and by extension his son dies. If he just drops all the meat to save himself, he survives the night, sure, but his son still dies of the fever. What do you do? Well, he makes a highly calculated sacrifice. He slices the sinew rope at his hip, takes half the meat bundle, drags it into the brush, and vigorously smears it against a fallen log so that heavy scent really sticks. This effectively baits 3 of the wolves, who immediately start snarling over the big chunks. But the 4th wolf? It's a starving younger one, and it totally ignores the bait. It stays locked on the father. So he backs up against a tree and just waits. When the young wolf lunges, he has exactly 1 swing with his flint knife. He takes a shot, and he connects. That survival instinct leads us perfectly into Section 4, Ancient Triage and Medicine, specifically focusing on prehistoric triage. By this point, the father is completely empty, freezing cold, and lost in the dark. He lets out an alive and trouble call, and his band actually hears it and carries him home. But when they get him to the fire, his leg is in full-blown crisis mode. It's turned dark purple with angry red lines streaking up his thigh. You guys know what that is. That's the ticking clock of a deadly blood infection. His wife immediately jumps into action using ancient medicinal agents. First up is yarrow, a flowering plant she crushes into a green pulp. This actively slows the bleeding and reduces swelling. Next is pine resin, this incredibly sticky tree sap that acts as a natural, watertight sealant to keep further infections out of the deep cut. Now, as history students studying early human resourcefulness, I want you to pay really close attention to the exactness of this procedure. This is not just random guesswork. Step 1. She washes the wound with scalding hot water. Water so hot it actually hurts worse than the cut itself, because they knew that heat kills the unseen things that kill people. Step 2. She presses that crushed yarrow deep down into the cut. Step 3, she coats the entire leg in that protective pine resin. And finally, she wraps the whole thing incredibly tightly in a clean animal hide. We are looking at accumulated, highly effective medical science happening thousands and thousands of years before anyone even dreamed of modern antibiotics. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, the lineage of survival and the power of generational knowledge. Let's take a step back for a second and look at the broader historical implications of what just went down around that prehistoric fire pit. The wife's ability to seamlessly boil this life-saving broth for her son while simultaneously performing triage on her husband's infected leg, it is a stunning, mind-blowing testament to the generational transfer of early human knowledge. She learned this specific protocol from her mother, who learned it from hers, and so on. This treatment, this deep botanical knowledge of what is medicine and what is deadly poison, is quite literally older than the spoken language they're using to communicate with each other. You have to consider the absolute brutal math behind that generational knowledge. Trial and error back then wasn't getting a bad grade on a test. It was literally a matter of life and death. Just 3 years ago, the wife's brother was treated for a fever using only water and herbs, and he died. But 1 year ago, a cousin was given nutrient-dense meat broth, and he survived. Fast forward to today, because of the 30 pounds of meat the father risked his life to scavenge, the wife makes the broth, feeds it to their son, and by the time the moon is directly overhead, the boy's fever finally breaks. Observing and cataloging those past outcomes directly dictated the survival of the entire human species. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder as you continue studying early human history. If a single survival technique took 40 generations of trial, error, and brutal death to perfect, how much accumulated invisible history is hidden in the everyday baseline remedies we completely take for granted today? From endurance hunting to botanical medicine, the mechanics of prehistoric survival were just unbelievably sophisticated. Every modern comfort we enjoy was bought with the blood, sweat, and profound resourcefulness of those who came before us. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the history hidden in our everyday lives.